안녕하세요. 스테디윈입니다. 매일 꾸준히 하면 성공합니다. 오늘도 힘차게 영어를 마스터해 보세요. 파이팅!
To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee.
하퍼리의 앵무새 죽이기.
Chapter 1. The Second Text.
제1장의 두 번째 글. 4단계 영어 음성만을 들으며 확인 학습하기.
Our mother died when I was 2, so I never felt her absence. She was a Graham from Montgomery. Atticus met her when he was first elected to the state legislature. He was middle-aged then, she was 15 years his junior. Jem was the product of their first year of marriage. 4 years later, I was born, and 2 years later, our mother died from a sudden heart attack. They said, it ran in her family. I did not miss her, but I think Jem did. He remembered her clearly, and sometimes, in the middle of a game, he would sigh at length, then go off, and play by himself behind the car house. When he was like that, I knew better than to bother him. When I was almost 6, and Jem was nearly 10, our summertime boundaries, within calling distance of Calpurnia, were Mrs. Henry Lafayette Dubos's house, 2 doors to the north of us, and the Radley place, 3 doors to the south. We were never tempted to break them. The Radley place was inhabited by an unknown entity, the mere description of whom was enough to make us behave for days on end. Mrs. Dubose was plain hell. That was the summer Dill came to us. Early one morning, as we were beginning our day's play in the backyard, Jem and I heard something next door, in Miss Rachel Haverford's collard patch. We went to the wire fence, to see if there was a puppy Miss Rachel's rat terrier was expecting. Instead, we found someone sitting, looking at us. Sitting down, he wasn't much higher than the collards. We stared at him, until he spoke. Hey. Hey yourself, said Jem pleasantly. I'm Charles Baker Harris, he said. I can read. So what? I said. I just thought, you'd like to know I can read. You got anything needs readin', I can do it. How old are you? Asked Jem. 4.5. Goin' on 7. Shoot, no wonder, then, said Jem, jerking his thumb at me. Scout yonder's been readin' ever since she was born, and she ain't even started to school yet. You look right puny for goin' on 7. I'm little but I'm old, he said. Jem brushed his hair back, to get a better look. Why don't you come over, Charles Baker Harris? He said. Lord, what a name. It's not any funyane yours. Aunt Rachel says, your name's Jeremy Atticus Finch. Jem scowled. I'm big enough to fit mine, he said. Your name's longer'n you are. Bet it's a foot longer. Folks call me Dill, said Dill, struggling under the fence. Do better, if you go over it, instead of under it, I said. Where'd you come from? Dill was from Meridian, Mississippi, was spending the summer with his aunt, Miss Rachel, and would be spending every summer in Macomb from now on. His family was from Macomb County originally. His mother worked for a photographer in Meridian. Had entered his picture in a beautiful child contest, and won $5. She gave the money to Dill, who went to the picture show 20 times on it. Don't have any picture shows here, except Jesus ones in the courthouse sometimes, said Jem. Ever see anything good? Dill had seen Dracula, a revelation that moved Jem to eye him with the beginning of respect. Tell it to us, he said. Dill was a curiosity. He wore blue linen shorts that buttoned to his shirt. His hair was snow white, and stuck to his head like duck fluff. He was a year my senior, but I towered over him. As he told us the old tale, his blue eyes would lighten and darken, his laugh was sudden and happy. He habitually pulled at a cowlick in the center of his forehead. When Dill reduced Dracula to dust, and Jem said, the show sounded better than the book, I asked Dill where his father was. You ain't said anything about him. I haven't got one. Is he dead? No. Then, if he's not dead, you've got one, haven't you? Dill blushed, and Jem told me to hush, a sure sign that Dill had been studied, and found acceptable. Thereafter, the summer passed in routine contentment. Routine contentment was improving our treehouse that rested between giant twin chinaberry trees in the backyard. Fussing, running through our list of dramas based on the works of Oliver Optic, Victor Appleton, and Edgar Rice Burroughs. In this matter, we were lucky to have Dill. He played the character parts formerly thrust upon me, the ape in Tarzan, Mr. Crabtree in the Rover Boys, Mr. Damon in Tom Swift. Thus, we came to know Dill as a pocket Merlin, whose head teemed with eccentric plans, strange longings, and quaint fancies. But, by the end of August, our repertoire was vapid, from countless reproductions, and it was then that Dill gave us the idea of making Boo Radley come out. The Radley place fascinated Dill. In spite of our warnings and explanations, it drew him, as the moon draws water. But, drew him no nearer than the light pole on the corner, a safe distance from the Radley gate. There he would stand, his arm around the fat pole, staring and wondering. The Radley place jutted into a sharp curve beyond our house. Walking south, one faced its porch. The sidewalk turned, and ran beside the lot. The house was low, was once white, with a deep front porch and green shutters, but had long ago darkened to the color of the slate-gray yard around it. Rain-rotted shingles drooped over the eaves of the veranda. Oak trees kept the sun away. The remains of a picket drunkenly guarded the front yard, a swept yard that was never swept, where Johnson grass and rabbit tobacco grew in abundance. Inside the house, lived a malevolent phantom. People said he existed, but Jem and I had never seen him. People said he went out at night, when the moon was down, and peeped in windows. When people's azaleas froze in a cold snap, it was because he had breathed on them. Any stealthy small crimes committed in Macomb were his work. Once, the town was terrorized by a series of morbid nocturnal events. People's chickens and household pets were found mutilated. Although the culprit was Crazy Addie, who eventually drowned himself in Barker's Eddy, people still looked at the Radley place, unwilling to discard their initial suspicions. A Negro would not pass the Radley place at night, he would cut across to the sidewalk opposite, and whistle as he walked. The Macomb school grounds adjoined the back of the Radley lot. From the Radley chicken yard, tall pecan trees shook their fruit into the schoolyard. But, the nuts lay untouched by the children. Radley pecans would kill you. A baseball hit into the Radley yard was a lost ball, and no questions asked.
이 영상이 도움이 되셨다면 좋아요, 그리고 구독 부탁드립니다.